Welcome everybody to the WFA Better Marketing Podcast. This is the fourth of the year. An absolute delight to welcome Conny Braams, the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer of Unilever. And Conny, you're following in some very interesting footsteps this year. That Raja, our current president, was followed by Lubira Roche, who had an extraordinary digital transformation story to tell. And then Ivan Pollard, an Englishman in Minneapolis, who is an absolute legend of the marketing world. So not much of a tough act to follow. And indeed, you had a tough act to follow when you stepped into your new role in January 2020. So what a time. How are you? How are things?
Hi, David. Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. I think we all live in this strange dichotomy of, on the one hand side, seeing the personal sacrifices that people need to take living through COVID. And on the other hand, seeing in business terms the excitement going up because trends are accelerating. We see new trends coming up, and that actually fills me with quite a buzz, some energy, and a clear sense of direction.
Good. And I believe you were due to move to the UK just as all of this started. Did you get to move, or are you talking to us from the Netherlands?
Now I was looking forward to move to London, but before I could pack my things, COVID happened, and Unilever was probably one of the first ones to shut down all the offices. And actually, it didn't make a lot of sense anymore for me to then go and live in London, whilst the team wasn't meeting physically. And I actually was lucky because I met my new team in January and Feb. I met the Unilever executive that I knew, of course, for a long time already. And now I'm living in the Netherlands. I'm close to my parents, who are a bit anxious in these time of days. My daughters are studying in the Netherlands, so I get to see them more often. So there's always good sides and positive sides to not moving as well.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it takes an optimist to live through these times. And I hear you are an optimist, and looking on the good side, at least your life isn't in a cardboard box yet. I mean, cardboard box is coming soon. But anyway, to turn our attention a little bit to, the first few months of the job, because obviously you know Unilever well, your career has been spent there, and actually they do develop people phenomenally, and it's great to see you arrive in this role with such a breadth of experience. But you couldn't have had a plan for what was going to happen. So, what issues did you deal with early on in the pandemic? And I'm particularly interested, of course, in what you did in the US with the social platforms, but perhaps in the context of how you got going in the role.
Yeah, well, how long have we got? David, this indeed was not really what I had planned to do. So I was in my first 2 months of honeymoon, loving the new job, getting to know a lot of new people. You might think 30 years in a company, then you sort of know them all, but it's a huge company. And my last roles have all been leading businesses. And this obviously was quite a different role than I had done before. So I was getting to know all the agency partners again. Making sure that my internal and external network was getting up to speed, knowing what was going on. And then actually, the moment that my 100 days was sort of gone, COVID hit. So I could throw everything in the bin and sort of think, okay, crisis is here. So I would say that was actually my first stage, the crisis management, people safety first. And of course, we did that as Unilever, but immediately you do it for your own team as well. And not only thinking about your own people, but also the ecosystem in which you operate. So specifically about marketing and digital, in the first instance, it was, how do we shoot our commercials? How do we do that in a safe way? Is the messaging right? Is the tonality right? What categories do we really need to focus on in this time? Given the uncertainty that we lived in, obviously, in the beginning. So taking a look at new media channels, some media channels all of a sudden were not relevant anymore, way less out-of-home channels, cinemas were closed, but also some categories we really saw booming straight from the start. Hygiene with Lifebuoy, hand sanitizers, whether it was personal hygiene actually, but also surface hygiene, the hygiene brands we've got in our home portfolio, but also surprisingly in-home cooking. Obviously, there was no out-of-home eating anymore, so in-home cooking became a real flourishing business. So it was also setting your mind to, okay, which are the ones to really focus on now, and what do we do in this specific phase? But I think a couple of months in, David, we sort of noticed, okay, this is not going to be a post-COVID era that is coming to us soon. We will probably need to live with COVID for quite some time. And then you're starting to be in the mind of what are the trends that are going to stay with us? What was crisis and what is now changing forever? And in these things, you've often talked about it yourself as well, but I think everything for us was the first one to really notice new generations coming online and not leaving that anymore. You live your life in your house. All of a sudden, there's new demands being put on that. And probably this will stay with us for a bit of time. And especially knowing that we potentially live in a part of the world where vaccinations are on their way, but there's so much more out there where nothing like that is happening now. So experiences will be here for a lot longer.
I mean, I always wanted in my last gig to pause marketing on the platforms, mostly because of my lack of belief in the metrics. And I actually thought I would only get to know what was truly working and what wasn't if we could pause it. We never did. What kind of learnings did you get? And I see that meanwhile you're back on the platforms, but I'm really interested in what you learned from pausing and, you know, how you've applied that as you move into the next phase.
Yeah, there's probably two things to call out, David. On the first one is what we've learned is that actually by continue to work together with the platforms, you reach results that potentially without a pause you would not have reached. At least that's what I believe in. So we never stopped talking to them. We never said, okay, this is something, and now we'll see you back in the next year. So basically, what we really wanted to drive is make sure that they committed. They really committed. So and that they were driving actions in concrete steps to manage the harmful content. And now having these 11 harmful content areas, that they report on it, on the prevalence of it, that they now have said independent auditing will take place, and that there will be basically more controls for managing advertising adjacency per the GARM commitments. I think these are steps we have accomplished. But it was also needed that we were working on the basis that we already knew one another and that we respected one another. We only wanted to accelerate it because we used what was happening in the US for us to be an accelerator of the things that we thought were really needed from a consumer perspective, but also from a brand perspective. So, and am I completely happy, David? No, I'm not completely happy yet. So I think there's still a lot we need to do. And that's why we continue monitoring if they live up to the commitments. And there's new challenges coming every day, we all know. Yeah. On the other hand, I think that's what you alluded to as well. We have used the pause quite a bit because we didn't pause to not spend. We still wanted our brand power of our brands to continue to increase. And we found other ways of spending, but we used actually that moment for increasing our investments basically on meaningful actions, specifically focused on the Black community at that moment in time. Yeah. So I know that I've talked about the Crown Act for Dove to quite some audiences, but that was something that was actually going on for quite a while, which was against hair discrimination in the US, and we wanted the laws to be passed. Not only that we did, but we invested more towards that, but also we invested more in Black-owned or Black-targeted media partners, such as Black Entertainment Television, OWN, Essence, The Shade Room. So it gave us time actually to pivot and to really take a good look at what is it that we can do to amplify the message of the Hair Discrimination Act that we wanted to pass in 50 states. So I think by pausing, what we have learned is there is other ways of spending. There's potentially, it's not that you pause and then there's no ways of spending it. It gave us time to rethink a bit on where do we really want to spend it in this time of day. And then coming back to your measurement point, I think there's a lot happen in this respect, and cross-media measurement is by far not at the levels where we would like it to be. But obviously now we've come back. So we have already also seen that we actually would like to add social media to our media mix to reach other audiences and with more frequency and more personalized messaging. So obviously they have a role to play.
Yeah, I mean, these are, I think, fantastic lessons for all advertisers. And actually, the WFA, as you know, with the GARM program and Unilever are massive supporters and drivers of that. So we all owe you a debt for these actions and learnings. But if I could also come back to the other implication here, which is, I know you're a great believer in purpose-led creativity, and obviously you inherit and build on the great work that's led to the Sustainable Living Plan. And, everybody in the world always uses Unilever to demonstrate what it means to be purposeful, because it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And I think you've done some fantastic things. So can you talk a little bit about purposeful creativity and how you're feeling about evolving the Sustainable Living Plan?
Yeah, so well, I think time is on our side, if I cut a long story short, because what we have seen, actually also driven by COVID, is that the consumer has become more conscious. So and they're expecting brands not only to say the right things, but driven by transparency, also to do the right things. So no longer do they want brands to solve their issue, but also societal problems. And I think that's why, having invested quite a bit in really seeing what the pain points are for consumers, and then making sure that is authentically matched with the DNA of a brand, actually there's no better time for it. So that is really good. At the same time, you also see that the double-edged sword of value come into play, because obviously we're entering a period of recession as well. So we need to pay tribute to both the value equation of a brand, so having superior products at affordable prices for the cash constrained consumers. At the time, we also need to stand for the values that the brand offers, and really having a point of view on matters that matter to consumers. So I think this dual nature of value for brands is becoming even more important in this time. I think we as marketeers, we have a real critical role to this in this space. The way that Unilever grows, or many of our companies grow, is via brand. So the DNA was in the company, and what Paul Polman did together with the ULE at that time, the Unilever Executive Committee, is make it very explicit. So we want to double the business and halve our environmental imprint, and making sure that the society benefits from our efforts. What we have now done in the evolution of it, David, is we've said, actually, it needs to be even more part of our business. So it needs to be fully ingrained in what brands are driving. So brands as a force for good. What are the different categories standing for? We have articulated things like Clean Future for home care, or positive beauty for our beauty and personal care units, or future foods for our foods and refreshment category. So in a sense, what we have tried to do in the next step is making it even more interconnected with the business that we drive our business. So I think that is the evolution of the Unilever sustainability plan, the Unilever Compass, as we call it.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to watch, and please keep up this sensational work, because the world needs it. And actually, to kind of shout out another issue here. Obviously, you've got in your boss, Alan Jope, an excellent marketeer, and probably one of the few people that can say, yes, he does understand and know marketing. He's done it himself. I think you share with him a real distaste of woke washing and those that are pretending to be purposeful but actually aren't. Can you talk about that and give us a little insight onto some of your internal conversations about how to avoid something that looks like woke washing? Because many of the people watching this might be working in companies that are doing exactly that.
Yeah, it's. I think on this specific front, it's always better to take a look internally and without judging externally. But what I've come to know is that actually it needs to be so authentic and so close to actually the brand and the products that you offer. And what I've seen is that lots of people are always saying, yeah, but brands need to be born with a purpose. Yes, then it's much easier. I do agree. The vegetarian butcher, much easier. Ben & Jerry's, much easier. But we shouldn't forget that Dove was never born with a purpose. Dove had come up with a true insight, and that insight is still very relevant. We've then start calling it a purpose, and they're still living it and making it relevant for nowadays, and working together with the social platforms to make sure that beauty is shown in real ways. So I would say, whenever you embark on this journey, don't get um, discouraged by people saying, oh, it is only for brands who were ever born with it. It's really good to study these, because normally what it means is that these people say and do at the same time, straight from the start. Then the other
Yeah.
thing to notice is there's many examples of brands that have only later on really seen it, but really emphasize the do part of it. Because we live in a day and age that people, it's so transparent. You can't just take benefit of a situation that is a pain point for consumers, say that you take it seriously, but don't really act upon it. And that's why we really do a big effort in making sure that we always, within everything that we say, we make a last commitment on what are you actually doing about it. So and I think we have also seen that when Dove took on quite courageously the Courage is Beautiful act in the US, where we stood and wanted to show that actually the courage that our frontline workers are showing is beautiful in itself. Then we also want to make sure that we donate our products, that we take care of
Yeah.
masks, that we do that in an authentic way that is very much sticks to what the brands really wants to authentically stand for and has been standing for, and might evolve over time. The other thing, so it doesn't need to stick to whatever it was 20 years ago. It needs to continue to be part of culture.
And actually, because you're very generous with your time, as is Ellen, these stories get told all over the world. And I think you've got great examples in every continent of what you're actually doing, not just what you're saying. If I asked you that terrible favorite children quote, which is the act that you will look back on this year and go, that was a real moment when we did something to really deliver what we're saying?
I think the internal prize winner, because we do these awards as well, has been the one that I just called out, Dove. Courage is beautiful, and America is only beautiful when it's beautiful for everyone. But not to take one of the examples that everybody's always sharing. The other one that I would really like people to take a look at is the work we're doing with Brook Bond and on transgender. It's in India, and I think it's really courageous. It is really stepping on to something that is a real pain point in society. It's having a point of view on things at times that are controversial, and thinking about what does tea do. Tea brings people together around a cup of tea, and it brings people together who might take a look at things from a different perspective. But by having time and talking about matters over a cup of tea, you can actually bridge many worlds. And I think with that insight, then coming up with some communication that really strikes the right chord on in sort of seeing how people within India are really embracing transgenders, I think is really phenomenal. So that is another one that I truly really like.
That's great. And I think the other thing that I've seen is Unilever continues to really value creativity. And if I could use one of my least favorite marketing words, if we could just pivot just to talk about what you've been doing in house, because again, for the WFA we see lots of client organizations looking to insource and either have an internal studio, some say an internal agency. And obviously you've got the U Studio, which I know is generating more content than ever before. I think it's in partnership with Oliver. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how is that working? How are you feeling about that? Delivering the value you were expecting?
Yes. So obviously, yeah. So it's always easy to say, oh, the youth studios are growing above 40%. But of course, the time for digital media is also growing. But it also shows that people are liking to work with them. And I think it's the best of both worlds, because in the end, what we have is you have got internally the knowledge of the brand, but you've also got the knowledge and the latest insights of Oliver and U Studio in-house working hand in hand with our marketing teams. And U Studios is actually our biggest digital agency now, and really providing services across. We've got them in 21 countries. They've now sort of created, I think, over 1 million digital assets already. So they are building their knowledge on a daily basis. So for us, having a network of working with the big agencies, our big strategic partners, then a couple of independent creatives and U Studio seems to be working really, really well. And it has worked also in a time that in-housing was not possible, because that was part of the model. Obviously, David, they needed to sit next to our marketeers in-house and then work hand in hand to make sure that we allowed for creativity, but also alignment to the brand and get speed up. But now we needed to do it in home, as we would call it, so not physically together. So there was a different phenomena, and I'm really pleased to see that both on the more creative work together with our strategic partners, but also in the digital work that has really stepped up their game, creativity has not suffered. Actually, we have stepped up our creativity, and that is really remarkable to see. That also, even if you're not sitting physically together, but you are connected via these devices that we currently use as well, you can still be very creative and do it at the right speed and at the right quality. So this model is working for us. I'm happy to see that more and more countries are embarking on this journey. So it seems to be a model for us for at least the foreseeable future.
And how do you kind of cycle the learning and make sure everybody's benefiting from what's happening in one market in this changed world? Because, you know, the Unilever awards have been long established. I think even when I was a baby in the industry, that everybody was very proud of having a Unilever award, and it's good to see that working. But I was always worried about how do you get the learning from market X to market Y, and how do you take a great idea that's worked in one place and you recycle it somewhere else? Have you got systems, processes for that?
Yeah, well, as you started off with, the awards are always the celebration moment, and lots of people, that's the beauty of now doing it online. Now everybody can be part of it, whilst we used to do it normally in London or New York. So that's really good. But that is a celebration moment. And then, of course, there is some learning coming from it. What we have done is there's a part that is automation, and there's part that is still human based. So the automation base is we're working way more with modular creatives and creative automation to make sure that we use the right assets, that the distinctive brand assets are always part of our digital communication, that creative automation makes it possible from one asset to create 150 assets in a second and make it more personalized. So that is, and then you need to have a good asset bank basically to work from, where all the right assets are there, and you need to work with your agencies to make sure that they now provide it in Lego blocks and not as one specific asset. The other part is still very human based. So yes, we do have a center of excellence that gathers the best practices, that wants to spread it very quickly. And what we also see in the digital space, because we're still learning, I think collectively, this is never finished. There's a lot of appetite for learning. So we upskill people on a daily basis. We have recently announced another upskilling forum in terms of e-commerce. So that is another one that we're really stepping up our game on. And this is the way that we want to upskill everyone, of course, in raising the floor, but at the same time, in the center of excellence, raise the ceiling for the ones who are walking ahead and are really finding what is really working. And there is a lot of trial and error, A/B testing. Make sure that you optimize on a very regular basis, but always using the right assets to start off with.
And how about, I think another subject I've read you talk about is data ethics. And of course, as we move into a cookieless world and the importance of first party data rises, I mean, you can't A/B test getting data ethics wrong. So, you know, how is that working? Obviously, you're blessed with the great Jamie, who's working with the WFA on the self-same subject.
Well, Jamie keeps us all very aware and it makes it top of mind all the time. So Jamie has indeed been working with the WFA to publish his paper on the joint paper on data ethics, and that is really guiding us, because it's sort of the next step up. First, you need to, of course, legally comply with whatever regulation there is. Then you have a responsibility to take consumer privacy very seriously. But then actually it continues into data ethics and the way that you use it. And is it still relevant? For us to gather this data, and how do we use it in the best possible way? So these are questions that not only Jamie, but the rest of the organization is now asking more and more often. And basically what you see, the latest movements, privacy is not any longer a topic that is just driven by us or by the WFA or by GARM. Actually, all the platforms are working towards it as well. So, and there's an announcement being made. Google indeed was the latest one, I think. So yes, first party data is becoming more important for us to get the insights. So for us to really make sure that we innovate and communicate in a relevant way, but also for retargeting, remarketing. But there's other ways to do it as well. So I wouldn't really stare myself blind on just getting first party data, especially in line with the data ethics that we try to follow, because there's context marketing that is also available. There's cohort marketing that is available. So there's other ways of reaching our consumers and the people that we matter for most in different ways than just taking a look at, let's gather as much data as we can. Because you quickly get to the limits of what we consider to be ethical.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And perhaps while we're on the subject of data and social media, I'm fascinated that I think you first opened your Twitter account back in 2016, and you have yet to tweet. Now, I by the way, I have every empathy with this, but when I was doing my research for this, I looked on Twitter and thought, well, I must be doing something wrong. I can't find your tweets, and the reason I can't, is it true there aren't any?
Yes, it's true. It's true. So you've done your read really well. And I was planning. I said, oh, I'll be as transparent as can be. But let's keep this a bit of this one is a bit of a mystery still. When my first tweet is going to happen, so we'll keep that as a bit of a secret. Follow this, and more to
Well, it
come.
is. I think it's good. It adds a very nice mystique. I like it though, because I do. As I kind of mentor and coach people, I was mentoring somebody about don't overuse social media. I mean, it needs to be used wisely, I think, and it's a trap for us marketeers to be as I once said, the dog that barks at every passing car, and we shouldn't do that. Anyway, before I ask the closing two questions, a really important one, I think, as we're a year into all of this, is the impact on hiring, the impact on the young generation as they enter the world of work, and how they're feeling and how they're seeing it. How you've always had a great graduate program. I mean, how has that impacted how you're looking at things there? And are you seeing a different kind of entry happening and people with different requirements? Because I'm going to guess that you've got the biggest application in the world for your graduate program. Everybody would want to work at Unilever. Why wouldn't you want to?
Oh, well, thanks for the compliment. But indeed, we're in many of the markets the employer of choice for students. So that's still great to see in a world where we see startups also, of course, attracting lots of young talent. But the fact that they get a good education, an immediate impact, and learn and have a chance to develop and work with in a system, hopefully that is a mirror to their own values, creates a nice employee proposition. Now, what we have seen is that parts of the experience are missing. If you enter the program is still alive, it's called the UFLPs, the Unilever Future Leader Program. It's still a 3-year trainee program, and you rotate every 6 months. So you get a really nice view of what is marketing about, or what is supply chain about, or what's finance about. So that is really still in existence. Now, it has been a bit more cumbersome with people working from home. And because you can't create, which is part of the experience, this trainee class. When I was still leading the Netherlands, we had 50 trainees entering, and they created this own social network, people from all across the Netherlands, but also from people from abroad joining. So, and that is the part that we needed to overemphasize almost. And I'm sure that is what people are really longing for. Now, we have done ways to overcome it, but I wouldn't say that we have mastered it, because this is a difficult period to enter a company and to get the same experience as if it was a physical building that you're entering, or have the ability to travel to other countries for Unilever. what we've seen from a profile perspective is that we are looking for people who are more digitally savvy. So also in the marketing space, and that is profile-wise a bit of a change. These people are also in high demand. So we also see that whenever we've hired people in e-commerce or digital talents, these people don't have the same attrition levels as we used to see. So that's also why we have embarked on the journey to really make sure that we make future fit marketing careers, brand crafted careers, but also digital careers. So, and I think that is after you've done your UFLP stint, this is really needed to keep our digital talents with us and to make them see the beauty that Unilever has, but also the impact that they can have being part of a bigger organization that actually wants to do good.
That's fantastic. I think the war for talent is going to continue to rage, and all the things we've been talking about are the very reasons that people will always want to work for Unilever, and they'll stay for as little time as you have, just the 30 years and counting. A couple of questions that we're always closing with. Who else would you like to see interviewed in this series? Who do you think we should get for the WFA audience?
Oh, I was hesitating with my amongst my two heads. So my marketing head get Jaap Korteweg in, who is the founder of the Vegetarian Butcher, because it's a digitally first business. He's the founder. It's a business that he gladly sold to Unilever because he wants to become the biggest vegetarian butcher in the world, and realized that he can't do it on his own. So, and he has really looked around to the company that matches his values. And he truly believes, because we take purpose so seriously, that this is the company to join. The other one that I was thinking about, so I was a bit in between two, is in this same space could be Henk-Jan Beltman, who is the current CEO of Tony Chocolonely, which I think is a really nice example of a systemic change that he's driving by influencing the rest of the chocolate industry. So these were a bit on my marketing side and my purpose side. And on the digital side, take a digitally native business. How do they build brands? And being a digitally native business, and Liquid IV is an acquisition we've just done. Andy Lewis is one of the great people within that, and he has a very distinct view on D2C, on how you build brands with performance marketing and within the DDM space, and how he is building that up from starting quite small to now being quite a significant business.
Okay, good. Well, plenty of opportunities for us to find more people there. and then, obviously one thing we haven't talked about is you are not just the Chief Marketing Officer, you're the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer. There are many titles for he or she or they who lead marketing these days. What do you think should be at the top of anybody's priority list as we move further into 2021?
Well, combining these two, David, I would say let's use digital to make sustainable choices simple and preferred for consumers. And where is this coming from? We have always said that we want to make sustainable living commonplace. And I think as a company, you can do as much as possible in really taking a good look at your value chain. But the moment that the consumer is not joining with making sustainable choices, we are going to go nowhere, because the consumer are people. So we want everybody embarking on this journey. The problem is we made it very difficult for consumers to choose an alternative, because there's so many logos around, there's so many claims around, it's really difficult. So how do we change behavior as much and make sure that people start to see that with their daily choices they make on specific products in the FMCG sector, they can really have an impact. And then it's up to us as marketeers to say, you know what, let's make it easier, simpler, and preferred for consumers to take the sustainable choice. So that would be the one that I would love to call out as the biggest priority. And I don't think we're going to solve it in a year. So I might say this for the coming 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, repeat. One of my favorite Keith Weed quotes was "Miserable people get miserable results," and the obverse of that is so obviously true. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Real privilege to have this conversation, Conny. And I look forward to meeting one of these days in person, hopefully. But I know everybody will have enjoyed this as much as I have. And next month we will be back. And next month we'll be back with the marketing leader of Mattel for Barbie and Dolls, Lisa McKnight, a fantastic speaker. So look forward to her. And I better go and buy some Barbies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.